Have you ever noticed how some people walk into a room and immediately everyone changes their behavior, even without them saying a single word? Most people live under the illusion that power comes from speaking loudly, being charismatic, or constantly seeking the approval of others. But the reality is much more complex and, for some, disturbing to admit. Every social interaction, every entrance into a room, every moment of silence has invisible layers of power operating silently. While you believe you need to prove your worth or show who you are, others are consciously cultivating a presence that does exactly the opposite. The most disturbing truth about influence is this: the most powerful people are often the most enigmatic. When you are completely legible, predictable, and transparent, you lose the ability to generate the psychological tension that is the basis of all genuine respect. Machiavelli understood something few do. It's better to be feared than loved, but even better to be respected for being unpredictable. When people can't completely categorize you, when they can't predict your reactions, when there's always a layer of mystery about your capabilities, they treat you with a respectful wariness that no amount of charm can buy. What you'll discover today isn't crude intimidation techniques, but rather the subtle art of cultivating a presence that generates natural respect through strategic uncertainty. You'll learn to use silence, unpredictability, and mystery as tools of social power. The question isn't whether you want respect. Everyone does. The question is, will you continue to beg for respect through approval, or will you cultivate the kind of presence that automatically generates respect? Prepare to discover the disturbing power of the enigmatic presence. 3. The laws of power rule. 1. The art of meaningful silence, the tactic. You cultivate a specific kind of silence that is not empty, but charged with unrevealed possibilities. Your silence suggests depth, constant analysis, and knowledge that you may or may not choose to share, creating a psychological tension that forces respect. This rule operates on the fundamental principle that the human brain abhors a vacuum. When you don't fill the space with unnecessary words, others begin to project meaning and power onto your silence. In practice, this means eliminating idle chatter, reactive comments, and the need to fill awkward pauses. You speak only when your words add real value or when your speech serves a specific strategic purpose. You can implement this through deliberate pauses before responding, maintaining eye contact during silences, and posture that suggests you are processing information at levels others cannot perceive. Timing is crucial. You alternate between moments of intelligent verbal engagement and moments of quiet observation, creating a pattern that makes people value your words when you choose to use them. The key is to make your silence seem like a conscious choice, not shyness or lack of opinion. Avoid appearing absent or disinterested. Your silence should suggest deep analysis and constant evaluation. The psychology behind strategic silence activates what psychologists call the competence projection effect. When someone is consistently silent in social situations, other people's brains automatically assume there are sophisticated reasons for this restraint. From a cognitive perspective, this works because it violates social expectations in an intriguing way. Most people talk too much, so when you consistently talk less, it suggests you operate with different standards that may indicate intellectual or emotional superiority. When you apply this rule, you're essentially forcing others to work harder to discover you. This generates a psychological investment that translates into increased respect. The reason this is so effective is that it touches on fundamental insecurities. What are they thinking? Why aren't they reacting the way I expect? Do they know something I don't? Neurologically, uncertainty about your intentions keeps others in a heightened state of attention when they are around you. Rule 2. The power of calculated unpredictability. The tactic. You deliberately vary your behavior patterns, reactions, and availability to prevent others from developing a complete understanding of how you operate. Predictability is the killer of respect. Unpredictability is its protector. This approach is based on the understanding that when people can fully predict your reactions, they stop treating you with respectful caution and start treating you as a known variable that can be manipulated. Implementing this requires you to consciously vary aspects of your behavior, sometimes being very social, other times being reserved, sometimes responding immediately, other times taking time, sometimes being generous, other times being selective. You can apply this through subtle but noticeable changes, altering your energy in different situations, responding to provocations differently depending on the context, showing different aspects of your personality to different people. The most effective contexts are repeated interactions where people begin to develop expectations of you. That's when you subtly break the pattern they've been building. Avoid being chaotic or inconsistent in a way that suggests emotional instability. The art lies in being unpredictable in ways that suggest depth and complexity, not mental imbalance. The key is to maintain a consistent core of values and character while varying the outward expression of those aspects. The psychology behind unpredictability activates neural systems of alertness and attention in the brains of others. When someone can't fully categorize you, their brain continues to devote cognitive resources to resolving who you are, keeping you relevant in their minds. Psychologically, this exploits the reward uncertainty effect. When people don't know exactly what kind of response they'll get from you, they tend to invest more energy in the interaction and value your positive reactions more when they come. The mechanism works by preventing social habituation, the process by which the brain stops paying attention to predictable stimuli. By remaining unpredictable, you prevent others from stopping paying attention to you. Neurologically, this maintains activation in areas of the brain responsible for novelty processing and threat opportunity assessment, keeping you psychologically interesting and important. People respond with increased respect because unpredictability suggests hidden resources and unrevealed capabilities. Rule 3. Creating an aura of mysterious competence. The tactic. You leave subtle evidence of your capabilities and accomplishments without ever bragging or fully explaining the scope of what you can do. You allow others to gradually discover your competence, creating a sense that there is always more than meets the eye. This rule operates on the fundamental principle that organically discovered competence is far more impressive than advertised competence. When people discover their abilities on their own, they value that discovery more. In practice, this means allowing your capabilities to be revealed through actions and results, not through declarations. You casually mention past projects. Let evidence of specialized knowledge emerge naturally in conversation, or demonstrate skills when relevant. You can implement this through indirect references. When I've worked on similar projects, or in my experience with this situation, without elaborating on impressive details unless asked directly. Timing is crucial. You reveal your skills gradually and contextually, never revealing all your credentials at once. Each interaction reveals a new layer of your capabilities. The secret is to be substantive without being ostentatious. Your skills should emerge naturally from the needs of the situation, not from your need to impress. Avoid obvious false modesty or downplaying your abilities. This seems manipulative. The trick is to be factual, but not exhaustive about what you can do. The psychology behind the gradual discovery of competence activates the brain's reward system more intensely than immediate revelation. When people discover their abilities, they feel they have gained valuable information through their own perception. From a cognitive perspective, this works because it allows others to feel like they're discovering hidden treasure rather than being sold a product. The feeling of discovery generates more respect than the feeling of being the target of self-promotion. Psychologically, this exploits the progressive revelation effect. We tend to value information that we obtain gradually more than information that we receive all at once. The mechanism works by creating increasing curiosity. Each revelation of competence makes others wonder what other capabilities you might have. Neurologically, this activates pattern seeking and scanning systems in others' brains, causing them to invest mental energy trying to map the full extent of their capabilities. Rule 4. Controlling emotional availability, the tactic. You carefully regulate when and how you show approval, disapproval, or any strong emotional reaction, making your responses valuable because they are scarce and unpredictable. Your validation becomes precious because it is not easily obtained. This approach is based on the understanding that when you react emotionally to everything, your reactions lose value. When you are selective with your emotional responses, each reaction carries significant weight. Implementing this requires you to develop conscious control over your emotional expressions, not suppressing emotions, but choosing when and how to express them for maximum strategic impact. You can enforce this through calibrated responses. React enthusiastically only to truly impressive things. Show disapproval only when important lines are crossed. Demonstrate approval only when genuinely deserved. The most effective contexts are situations where others are seeking emotional validation from you. When your validation isn't automatic, it becomes more valuable. Avoid being emotionally cold or robotic. The goal is selectivity, not absence of emotion. When you choose to show emotion, it should be genuine and appropriate to the situation. The key is to make your emotional reactions mean something. When you smile, it should matter. When you frown, it should carry weight. The psychology behind emotional availability management exploits the psychological principle of scarcity. We tend to value things more highly that are limited or difficult to obtain. When they're emotional, approval is not readily available. People work harder to get it. Psychologically, this triggers what researchers call the intermittent reward effect. When we don't know when we'll receive emotional validation, each instance becomes more impactful. The mechanism works by creating value through scarcity. When your emotional reactions are rare and well-calibrated, they take on disproportionate significance. Neurologically, this activates dopamine systems in others' brains more intensely than constant validation. The uncertainty of when they'll receive your approval makes each instance more rewarding. From an evolutionary perspective, this touches on dynamics of social hierarchy. Approval from high-status figures, which you become through this selectivity, is naturally more valuable than approval from just anyone. People respond by working harder to impress you because your approval has become a scarce and valuable resource. Rule 5. The art of the disproportionate response, the tactic. Occasionally, you respond to minor situations with more intensity than expected, and to major situations with less intensity than expected, creating uncertainty about how you might react in any future situation. This unpredictability breeds respectful caution. This rule operates on the fundamental principle that when people cannot predict the scale of your reactions, they tend to treat you more carefully to avoid triggering unexpected responses. In practice, this means occasionally reacting strongly to small violations of your standards to establish clear boundaries, and reacting calmly to larger provocations to demonstrate superior control. You can implement this through strategic variation, sometimes paying serious attention to details that others would overlook, other times remaining composed in the face of situations that would leave most people flustered. Timing is crucial. This tactic should be used sporadically and in a seemingly principled manner, not randomly. It should appear as if you have complex patterns, not as if you're emotionally unstable. The key is to make your intense reactions seem based on principles that are important to you, and your calm reactions seem based on superiority of perspective. Avoid appearing bipolar or emotionally dysregulated. The art is in varying the intensity in a way that suggests depth of character and complexity of values, not mental instability. The psychology behind strategic disproportionality exploits the human tendency to avoid situations where the consequences are unpredictable. When people can't gauge what kind of reaction to expect from you, they naturally become more cautious. Why? This works because it forces others to maintain a heightened state of attention when interacting with you. They can't autopilot the interaction because they don't know what kind of response they might trigger. Psychologically, this activates uncertainty avoidance systems. When the consequences of actions are unpredictable, we tend to be more cautious in our approaches. The mechanism works by creating anticipatory anxiety, not negative anxiety, but heightened alertness based on uncertainty about possible reactions. Neurologically, this maintains activation in areas of the brain responsible for social monitoring and risk assessment when others are around you. People respond with greater respect because they interpret your unpredictability as an indication that you operate with patterns and priorities they don't fully understand, suggesting sophistication or hidden power. Rule 6. The strategic use of social ambiguity. The tactic. You deliberately keep aspects of your opinions, loyalties, and intentions ambiguous, forcing others to work to figure out where you really stand on important issues. Total clarity eliminates mystery. Strategic ambiguity preserves power. This approach is based on the understanding that when everyone knows exactly where you stand on every issue, you lose the ability to navigate complex situations and become too predictable to sustain interest or caution. Implementing this requires you to resist social pressure to immediately pick sides on controversial issues, instead asking questions that demonstrate you are thinking on more complex levels than superficial discussion. You can apply this through responses like, "It's a complex situation," or "I see merit in multiple perspectives." When pressed for definitive opinions on issues where quick positioning doesn't serve your interests, the most effective contexts are political or social situations where there is pressure for tribal alignment. Your refusal to be easily categorized forces others to work harder to understand your position. Avoid appearing indecisive or unconvinced. The art is in appearing as if you have sophisticated opinions that don't fit easily into simple categories, not that you have no opinions. The key is to demonstrate that you think independently and in a complex way, not that you avoid responsibility for your positions. The psychology behind strategic ambiguity exploits the human need to categorize people to predict behavior. When you resist easy categorization, you force others to invest more cognitive energy trying to figure out you. Psychologically, this triggers what researchers call the information gap effect. When there are gaps in our understanding of someone, we tend to fill those gaps with projections that often overestimate their competence and sophistication. The mechanism works through the productive frustration of the human need for social clarity. When we cannot easily categorize someone, we tend to assume there is complexity and depth that we are not perceiving. Neurologically, this maintains activation in neural networks responsible for social problem solving. The brain continues to work to solve who you are. From an evolutionary perspective, this taps into instincts about mysterious figures in social groups. We tend to treat them with cautious respect because we don't know what resources or alliances they might have. People respond respectfully because well-calibrated ambiguity suggests sophistication of thought and possibly information or perspectives they do not possess. Rule 7. The creation of personal legend through selective mystery, the tactic. You allow interesting stories about yourself to circulate without fully confirming or denying them, creating an aura of capabilities and experiences that may be greater than reality, but which you never need to prove. Let others build your legend. This rule operates on the fundamental principle that reputation based on partial mystery is often more powerful than reputation based on completely known facts, because it allows people's imaginations to work in their favor. In practice, this means not immediately correcting misunderstandings that favor you, not denying beneficial rumors about your capabilities, and occasionally making vague references to experiences or knowledge without fully elaborating. You can implement this through indirect references. Some situations I face taught or in certain circumstances without specifying exactly which situations or circumstances. Timing is crucial. You allow the mystery to build organically through scattered references, not through active creation of false stories. The secret is to never lie directly, but also to never fully reveal the extent or limitations of your experiences and capabilities. Avoid fabricating stories or skills you don't possess. They will eventually reveal themselves. The art lies in allowing real aspects of your experience to be amplified by the imagination of others. The psychology behind personal legend creation exploits the human tendency to fill in the blanks in narratives with elements that make the story more interesting or impressive. When there are mysterious elements in your personal story, people tend to assume elements more impressive than reality. Psychologically, this triggers the halo effect. When we have incomplete positive impressions of someone, we tend to assume that unknown aspects are also positive. The mechanism works through the power of suggestion and projection. When you suggest experiences or capabilities without detailing them fully, you allow others to project their own fantasies of impressiveness. Neurologically, this activates narrative creation systems in other people's brains. They literally help construct an amplified version of who you are. From a social perspective, this exploits the fact that interesting stories naturally spread and amplify. Each repost adds elements that make the narrative more compelling. People respond with respect because they assume there's more than meets the eye that you have. Hidden experiences, knowledge, or abilities that may be relevant in future situations. 4. The mindset shift. These rules aren't just isolated tactics to be used sporadically. They represent a fundamental shift in how you present yourself to the world and how others perceive you. When you master the art of enigmatic presence, you develop what Machiavelli considered the most sophisticated form of power: the ability to command respect, not through what you reveal, but through what you suggest. You stop trying to impress others directly and start allowing them to impress themselves with their own projections of you. When you internalize these laws, you're not just learning to be more mysterious. You're developing a deep understanding of how perception and reality interact to create social power. You begin to see that most people waste influence by constantly trying to prove who they are, instead of gradually allowing others to discover them. This is the difference between seeking approval and commanding respect, between being completely legible and maintaining layers of complexity that generate ongoing interest, between proving your worth through obvious demonstrations and allowing your worth to be discovered through gradual revelations. True mastery isn't about being mysterious for the sake of being mysterious. That would be empty theatricality. Mastery lies in cultivating an authentic presence that naturally contains depth, complexity, and elements that aren't immediately obvious to casual observers. When you operate from this heightened consciousness, you stop competing for attention and begin to naturally command respect through the enigmatic quality of your presence. When you operate from this heightened consciousness, You no longer need to work to impress people. Your authentic yet strategically revealed presence does the work for you. 5. The mastery of art, the ability to command respect through enigmatic presence, is perhaps the most elegant form of social power there is, because it transforms one's own natural complexity into a continuing strategic advantage. The rules we've just explored aren't abstract theories. They're fundamental laws of how social perception works that operate independently of your awareness of them. The difference is that now you have the choice to remain completely legible or develop mastery of strategic disclosure. A truly powerful person is not one who impresses through obvious displays, nor one who hides completely. It's one who reveals enough to command respect, but keeps enough in reserve to maintain mystery and continued interest. Remember, knowledge without application is merely intellectual entertainment. Real power comes from the conscious practice of selective disclosure, keen observation of how others respond to different levels of transparency, and the courage to resist social pressure to open up completely when it doesn't serve your strategic interests. Every social interaction will now become an opportunity to subtly apply these laws. Every attempt by others to figure you out will be a chance to demonstrate that you understand perceptual dynamics that overly transparent people don't. True power doesn't come from revealing everything about yourself. It comes from revealing only what serves your purposes when it serves your purposes. If this video changed your perspective on social presence and enigmatic influence, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future content on social mastery. In the comments, tell me which of these 7 rules had the greatest impact on your thinking about mystery and strategic revelation, and share a situation where you observed someone command respect through enigmatic presence rather than obvious self-promotion. Mastery of silent influence begins with awareness, and awareness begins now.